I think sometimes we get locked into, and I fight against this too, a lot of my colleagues fight against this too, where we get locked into this weird martyrdom or victimhood
Yeah.
of I'm so alone, nobody understands
Yeah.
me. I don't get paid enough, which is also true. So yeah, totally legit. None of us get paid enough. He'll just like I'm so alone. What is to become of me? And we
Yes.
see this, and for years, for the first few years in like the mid 2000s, kind of like the Taylor Swift golden era, like 2008 to 2012, where I started starting like in the 2010s and late noughties 2000s to really do speaking and conferences more often.
Uh-huh.
But I noticed that half of these workshops were perpetuating this awful victimhood. And
Yeah.
on one hand, yes, it's good to have a community to cry on a shoulder, vent when
Yeah.
you're frustrated. Somebody gets where you're coming from. Totally healthy, valid, alive, and other like local, regional professional associations that usually belong to Association of Leaders in Volunteer Engagement or national one in the U.S.
Yeah.
That's part of the community, is that venting and that and not feeling alone, as you mentioned.
Right.
But I was like going to some of the leaders and organizers, and my feedback after was, why are there so many workshops encouraging victimhood? Why are there so many things about, this culture of martyrdom?
Yeah.
And the very first Tuesday tip that I put on this channel in whatever it was, January, February, earlier this year is, you know, changing how you talk about yourself and advocate for yourself, and changing how you think about yourself, that we're not cat herders. We're not people that are just struggling through chaos, because I see that like drives me bananas. I hate when I see like I'm a cat herder. I'm like, no, you're
No,
not. It's
you're
like
not.
and again, our arts backgrounds, you're a conductor of an orchestra. You're a
Yeah.
conductor, or if they're more mechanical, a trained conductor. But just this idea that when we shift our attitudes about ourselves, when we change our language, part of that core marketing communication
Yes.
thing, when our colleagues understand and the leaders of our agencies understand, then that's where that core change happens. That's where
Yes.
that wonderful, butterfly effect. A butterfly flapped its wings in the volunteer engagement program, and the executive director realized this has to be a core strategy. That's such a huge part of our job, and I am so glad that you're in it with me, trying to convincing people, not just our colleagues, but within our agencies, but just the outside world, that this is a real career.
Yes.
um, Even if you're a department of one, you're part of a whole community. And
Yes.
one of my favorite things, and we touched on this in our conversation last week, is not just that networking event, but even dinner parties. I've had people, I've tried to explain my career just with friends at social events where I kind of know them, or they're friends of friends, or when we could all gather safely together. And someday we
Right.
will again.
Right.
So this is clearly not a recent story, but over the year, over the years, when we could gather in groups safely, um, I I would say, oh yeah, I'm a leader of volunteers. I design volunteer programs. I design the strategies around it and engagement. And they'd kind of ponder, and usually trying to be polite and encouraging, they'd say, oh, what's it like to be in a field where you're not allowed to ever fire anybody?
Yeah.
Have you had that happen at events too, or social things or conversations?
Yeah. Yeah. And you're like, what are you talking about?
As I fired somebody yesterday. What do you?
Yeah.
My nickname is the Hammer. I am. If somebody screws up, whether they're paid or unpaid on my team, like they are, if they have violated the code of conduct, they are gone. They are out the door. And,
Funny.
and there's so many like weird misconceptions about what we do and how we do it. So you're right. It's you have to sometimes take a deep breath and ground yourself, and just like it's an educational moment, it's a learning moment, it's a little bit of emotional labor sometimes, but it's like we have each other's backs, and
Yes.
we've got your journal, and we can do
Yes.
all
I
that
got the
amazing stuff. You've
journal.
got the journal. What are some of the other? Do you have any good kind of aha moments that have happened? It like you've gotten your colleagues in your agency on board, but we
Uh-huh.
also are talking about there's very few there isn't a communities of practice just yet, although maybe Alive will start one because we have other COPs of leaders and volunteers who are in the arts. There are things for museums. There's a specific organization for volunteer engagement professionals in museums, and I think in
Mhm.
California it's called CAMA or something like that. And I've been to some of their conferences. So there's these funny, like, very sector specific, like zoos and aquariums and this,
Right.
but as far as like plays and musicals and symphonies, that seems harder to plug into. Is there any kind of community in Florida that's like a local thing that's just kind of for people in the arts? Have you joined any of that, or how's that going?
So, um, I'm sure it's probably out there. I have not found it yet.
I
Didn't
haven't
haven't
either, so
started
I don't know if it
it.
is. I haven't found
um,
one. Yeah.
so one thing that I did start with our the Performing Arts Center volunteer managers was just a monthly group where we all get on a Zoom call and talk about everything that's going on regarding um, performing arts uh, volunteer managers and the things that we are dealing with. Because it's funny, because sometimes, I know that there's a lot of other groups where it's just like managers of volunteers, but from different industries, and some of the stuff just absolutely does not apply. And some of the stuff that we're talking about, people are looking at us like, um, yeah. So we do have one. It's that we've started specifically for performing arts centers. And so if you happen to manage volunteers or interns in that space, reach out to me, let me know, I'll get you connected to that. But as far as like just in Florida, no. And I've tried to start a little something on the side called the Invaluable Workforce. And just funny, just talking about what you were saying in terms of how we have to change our thinking and what we were saying, because up until just about this week, I had called it the underestimated workforce.
Hmm.
And the reason why I had said that is because a lot of times people underestimate us. They underestimate what the work that volunteers can do, and they underestimate what the interns can do. And then when I was presenting to a group of fellow colleagues and I said the underestimated workforce, it didn't even sound right coming out of my mouth, because it was almost like I was speaking that we are often underestimated, which is true, but we
Yeah.
don't have to buy into that, to the martyrdom, like you said. So I instantly changed it. And I was like, no, 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 we are the invaluable workforce. And we are going to show you the impact and that we can have on an organization to elevate it, to take it to the next level. So that Facebook group I created, that Facebook group and that Facebook page and just different things like that. I'm always looking for ways to create and connect in any way, shape, or form. So, but specifically for PACs, that's the only one that I know of right now. And that's across, US, the world, whatever, however you want to do it. And especially right now, it's been just a wealth of help, because performing arts theaters are not opening up, unfortunately, anytime soon.
Yeah, we're
And
shut down. We know
yeah,
that, and I'm a singer too, so we know that singing is incredibly dangerous. I play brass instruments. Playing wind instruments is incredibly dangerous.
yeah,
Um, and nothing in all the theaters that I work with, some of them I'm still doing some online classes or some online performances, but most improv or musical theater, like, they're just, and thank goodness in San Francisco and California we have a rent moratorium, but that can't go on for years. So
mm-hmm,
there's and like you said, a larger performance arts center where you cannot gather people in person and
right,
say things or sing things loudly. This is a major sector impact. This is big,
major,
big,
major.
big,
And
big.
sometimes people don't even think about it. They think, it's not only just the people gathering, but it's the actors themselves. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
how are they going to act? It's just a whole. Challenges are our opportunities to grow.
Yay, grit
And
and persistence and
yes,
adaptability and improvising and
yes,
adapting, kind of evolve or perish kind of a
yes.
thing. It's like we
So
have
it's like,
to pivot.
game on, COVID.
Game on.
Challenge accepted. Yes.
Pivot, pivot or perish. Yeah,
Yes,
and
I love it. Pivot or perish. I love
pivot or
it.
perish. We're coming up with such good catchphrases and little
I'm
jingles
glad
today.
you're recording this. This is good stuff.
No, I'm like, oh, this is I can write songs around this. This is amazing. And well, I love that invaluable instead of underestimated because again, like it's always a process, right? It's
Hmm.
internally, it's always a process to unlearn any enculturated pattern, but especially language patterns. As you know, female identified people, we get extra weird levels of programming, you know,
Yes.
black, gay, whatever, like whatever other labels are on us or other identities are mixed into us,
Yeah.
there's automatic deep programming to unlearn
Yeah.
around persisting and accepting and breaking down bad systems in the big wide world. And it's so fascinating to see how the arts in general, especially Broadway, suddenly like, well, Hamilton's on, you watch Hamilton, everybody. Like there is a pivot and people are adapting and using either older recorded material.
Hmm.
Um, but everyone's kind of having to invent these new models of being around volunteer engagement. That's something that's a huge topic, and I've done tons of panels and talks and webinars in the last few months about this, and I'm sure you're having lots of conversations too of how do we come back and how is it safe and who can be remote and who has to be in person,
Right.
and the whole economy behind sitting packed in a theater and watching a live or an art center and watching
Yeah.
a live event like that has to change. And what does that look like? And this, and we're all creative people, we can do it.
Right.
But I'll put the link too to your Facebook group because I'll probably join it because it's so important to have, and I'll share it
Yeah.
around to all my other theater producing and festival producing
Yes, please,
pals.
please, please. And the great thing about it is the reason why we chose not to house it, like it's not really housed at the Art Center, so to
Hmm.
speak, um, is because with people being furloughed, they have to be very careful of what they do that's considered work. So
Exactly.
because it is not housed and it's just a group of people doing their thing,
Hmm.
and it's on Facebook and it's LinkedIn, it's a way for people who, if they have been furloughed, to stay in touch and understand what's going on in their industry so that when the doors do open back up, because they will,
Hmm.
they're not completely out of the loop of what has been going on, and they can keep their finger, on the temperature of everything that's taking place so that they are aware. So yes, 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 I will make sure that you have the links for those, and all are welcome, because performing arts, it's it's a unique, I mean, all sectors are unique,
This is
um
unique, unique.
but it's a unique, um because people always have this, well, not always, right? Okay, but a lot of times
Mostly,
they have
mostly.
this assumption that, oh, theater arts volunteer, really all they do is sit around and
Yeah,
go
how hard is that? Yeah.
right. You have no idea.
Hmm.
You have no idea. I will spare you the stories for this time, but I have some stories to share. You know, um, our volunteers make such an impact, and they do so much, and yeah, yeah.
And
So
again, like that invaluable and how I named this priceless advice is many other generations of leaders of volunteers before me have had the catchphrase. I don't even know who originated it. It might have been Rick Lynch, it might have been Susan Ellis, some Betty Stallings, someone way back in the day that, volunteers aren't free. They're priceless, but they're not free.
exactly.
And we're, picking up some of these core messages that are still resonant, positive, encouraging, cheerleading, that
Yes.
this is priceless advice,
Yes.
literally because it's coming to people for free from experts like you and others. And it's priceless because that's the value of our volunteers is you try to put, independent sector will say, oh, it's the average in the US is $25 an hour and da 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 da. It's like,
Right.
well, and that's somewhat useful. Like sometimes someone just really needs an analytical, logical bean counting
Yeah.
approach, and that's how they
Yeah.
understand data.
Right.
But it's so much more. And that's been the sole metric for far too long. And it has been changing in the last 10 years about what's the impact on the mission? What's
Right.
the personal stories, that storytelling, that
Yes. Yes.
marketing storytelling development that's so important. And just this idea that not only is it absolutely return on investment to acknowledge the value and the need for volunteers as a core strategy and the absolute value of the volunteer engagement expert in the agency, being at the table, being in those
Yeah.
conversations like we've gone over, and that being left out of those conversations, the organizations and agencies that are not weathering this crisis well, or probably
Mhm.
wouldn't weather any crisis well, are the ones consistently, both for when they come running to me, sometimes as maybe to be a consultant of like, help us fix this. It's like, you
Yeah.
just like chopped your own arm off. How can I
Right.
fix this? They're like, well, we fired or furloughed our volunteer coordinator, and we also didn't allow them to tell the volunteers what was happening. I'm like, I can't fix that for you.
Yeah,
I don't
like,
have I don't have a time
ah,
machine. And I'm like, oh, awkward. Oh, I don't have a time
you
machine. So I
guys.
said, and the ones that are surviving and thriving already have like what you've done, you know, and advocated, and they understand that this is, if not technically on leadership team, which I also think we should be, but at least at the table for these major decisions, and having this transparent communication
Yep.
with the talent pool, because it's your whole team, it's your
Yep.
whole talent pool. So I'm
And
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
Yeah, no,
And
yeah, I was about to hand off to you anyway, so
okay,
hand
well,
off.
so what I found um, was that I just thought like once the theater shut down and we weren't going to be, we don't have shows, which means the volunteers aren't coming in. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so scared. We're not going to have any volunteers when we open back up. Da, da, da. And just with me engaging and just like we do a weekly check-in, just hey, how are things going? This is what the update is for this week. My update is I have no updates, but I'm just checking in to make sure you guys are okay. How are you? And we took this time to engage in a lot of trainings, all the trainings that we wanted to do for years. We've been able to knock them out in the last 3 or 4 months virtually. And if they weren't able to attend the live, then they can go back and watch it. So we've been able to do so much. And I cannot, and the most shocking thing, and is just amazing to me, was that people are like, thank you for this. This has been engaging. It's been a lifeline because I'm at home and I don't have family here, or it's just nice to see everybody because I miss everybody. And it's kept everybody, well, not everybody, but it's kept a lot of people engaged. And when we send out a survey in terms of, are you ready to come back? And this, I mean, the amount of people that are like, yes, just give me some masks and some gloves and make people stand 6 feet. Let's go. I was touched because I really thought it was going to be an upward climb of, oh my goodness, we did all of this to build it up and now we're going to have to start over from scratch. And they are just ready to go. They're just like, Nicole, let's go. And so it's encouraged me to keep it up too, and just staying the course every week, just showing up, and I think it's made a world of difference because we were talking to another coordinator who is the same thing, or like her boss was like, the first thing they did was they just shut everything down and they haven't spoken to the volunteers. I was like, you gotta at least send an email, because you don't want, when you open back up and then you're gonna be like, oh, hey, we need your help, but we abandoned you for the last 6 months and didn't tell you anything. Now will you come back?
Like, no way. No thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, you only needed us when you wanted us. And it was just kind of like, I was like, try to get your boss to send at least an email.
Yeah,
just something.
something.
Yeah.
It's so important. And
Uh,
yeah, any final few minutes, any wrap up. We've done pretty good job with promo with your books, and I'm so glad that Facebook group exists, because I didn't know that before. I'm like, oh, I'm going to send that link around everywhere.
yeah, I will definitely send it out. I will
Yeah.
definitely make sure you have it. The only thing I would say is that just because it was my blog post for the week, just talking about feedback. And feedback is absolutely vital for growth, but it's how you respond to it that is really going to make the difference. And it's one of those things that, as a manager of volunteers, you have to learn to not take personal, And even because I tell people often, especially this is one of those things, like when I first started, I was like, you guys can give me all your feedback. It just has to be constructive. You know, I will accept constructive criticism. So 9 times of the 10, they didn't hear the constructive.
Yeah.
It was just the criticism. So, and I used to just get so frustrated about that. But then I realized I'm not going to be able to change other people's habits. I can only change how I respond to it. And so one of the things I had to learn to do was, even if it wasn't necessarily the nicest piece of feedback, it was still feedback. And is there something that I can take from it? Maybe they do have a valid point. Maybe their delivery wasn't the nicest, but do they have a valid point? And being able to sift through those and pull out the gold, to be, that is what you will learn to do. And that is what, those are the things that are going to help your program grow. That's going to help you grow. And those are the types of things that, as a new manager of volunteers or a new leader of volunteers, when we say don't go through it alone, because those are the types of things that if I can help somebody not have to go through the beating that I went through for 2 years to realize a lot of that wasn't personal, that would have been nice to hear. Because I spent like my first year crying. Like, just like, oh my God, people are so mean. I'm trying to do everything for them, and they're so mean to me. And that was only really about 10%, right? Because 90% of the people were amazing, but I was just like, I just felt like I get pelted with darts. And that was the other thing. I had to change my perspective of, why am I taking to heart what 10% of the people are saying when 90% are okay?
Mm-hmm.
So just all of those things that I would love to impart onto somebody who is just coming into it. And even if you've been in it for 3 to 5 years, you know, just hold your head high. And it's, so long as you know, if you are giving 110% and you are doing your best, what you are doing is enough. It will eventually come around. It will work itself out in the wash. Everything is going to, but so at the very least, that is what, if you can lay your head down at night and say that I gave 110%, I left it all on the floor and I did my absolute best today, then regardless of what may and may not have happened, because you're going to make mistakes, things are going to happen. But if you do everything that you can with the best of intentions and 110%, that is all anybody can ask, and everything else will work itself out.
Absolutely. Hallelujah. Yay.
We have a church. Hey.
Hallelujah. It's wonderful. And amazing to talk to you. Always, we could do this all day. I love it. Love talking to you. One day we'll be able to like talk in real life, in person,
Yes,
and like watch shows and play instruments and do fun, sing and cheerlead and dance and all that good stuff.
I'll bring my palms. I started walking with them because every time there'll be an opportunity, I'll be like, hey, where's my palms?
and it's delightful to talk to you, and thank you so much, Nicole, for being on Priceless Advice and offering your amazing, awesome Tuesday tips. And hopefully we'll talk to you again soon. Everyone will know how to get in touch with you, and I hope you stay happy, healthy, well in Miami. Don't let the hurricanes hit too hard.
No.
And and keep cheerleading. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure being here. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.